Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A day of protests and demands for better pay across San Diego County. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. University of California employees are calling attention to the wage disparity between those at the top and workers on the front lines. As KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado explains, rallies were held as the UC Board of Regents voted on giving chancellors raises.
We're fired up! Patient care and service employees of the UC Jacobs Medical Center in La Jolla used their lunch break to rally outside the hospital.
Treat your workers like you should.
This is one of 3 local rallies at UC campuses that joined thousands across the state to protest the pay gap between UC employees and the governing members of the university system.
UC knows the price of everything and the value of nothing.
Sean McCullum is the lead organizer of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 3299, the union that represents 6,000 hospital and service workers. He says the rallies were happening at the same time the UC Board of Regents was voting on giving their chancellors raises. They're asking for all employees to make a minimum of $25 an hour.
They give their chancellor a $500,000 raise, so he makes over $1.2 million now. The CEO here at the medical center, she makes $1.4 million. These raises have gotten out of control for the executives, and then they're saying they don't have money to help ordinary employees who save lives.
Isaac Zamora, a respiratory therapist, joined the rally line on his break.
99!
He says he was disappointed when he found out the regents were voting on giving those at the top of the pay scale another raise.
It made me feel that they really don't care about the work that we do here.
Especially when he sees his colleagues struggling to get by.
The chancellor for UCSD, they approved a 79% raise for him over 1 year. 79%. Meanwhile, we're out here asking for 5% just to keep us up so we can afford milk and bread. It stings. I can't say it doesn't. It stings.
He says those on the front line are now forgotten, and the people who stayed home during the pandemic and often still work from home continue to get the rewards. His message for the Board of Regents as they vote for a raise is simple.
To reconsider and think about the workers before you think about yourself.
They're also asking for the UC system not to invest in Blackstone, a company they say is contributing to the housing crisis. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And there's another labor dispute happening in our county. A work stoppage is disrupting bus service in the South Bay. KPBS reporter Melissa May has the story.
South Bay MTS bus riders got an unexpected halt to their travel plans as its contractor Transdev and their bus drivers negotiate a new contract.
I don't know what's going on.
San Isidro resident Raimundo Carlos just moved to the area and relies on public transportation to get around, especially today.
I was actually going for a job interview, so I was like on my way, like hoping to get a job, so like I don't really have to rely too much on the bus systems and whatnot. And it is a little discouraging. It makes me feel like a little defeated, but you can't, life always throws down some punches or unexpected things at you, and you just gotta, roll through the punches.
San Isidro resident Ricardo Contreras says he saw a lot of elderly and school students really confused at the bus station this morning.
They take the trolley and then they have to take the bus routes, for wherever they have to go. And MTS really dropped the ball by not letting them come out and advise these people.
Paola Gonzalez does not know how to drive and also relies on public transit.
Transit is very important because it takes us from point A to point B. So then being on strike also affects us.
Approximately 33% of MTS bus routes are not running. Jose Puga with Teamsters Local 683, the union who are representing the bus drivers, explains why.
We're here on a ULP strike. That's an unfair labor practice, and that refers to the company's behavior and bad faith negotiations, and also unreasonable working conditions that the company has practiced over the past decade.
Negotiations between Transdev and the union started back in October 2022, and over 600 drivers are currently affected.
This is something that they're known to do, as far as, underbidding and then turning around and try to make profit off the labor contracts, to the point where strikes happen and they blame the union.
Transdev is the company currently contracted to run 65% of all San Diego routes. In a statement, it says it is negotiating with the union in good faith, and the company says it has contingency plans to minimize disruptions and support its clients. Transdev also says it's made good faith concessions and is open to continued dialogue. The union is predicting the strike will go on for about 20 days. Melissa May, KPBS News.
More ambulances will soon respond to emergencies in San Diego. It's part of a new contract with Falck USA, which has struggled to meet response time goals since taking over the city's ambulance service in 2021. The city council unanimously approved the new deal yesterday, which calls for Falck to pay for a second company to boost service. And that company will be AMR, which provides service elsewhere in the county. And this begins on May 29th. It's been 2.5 years since San Diego voters demanded more powerful community oversight of police. But KPBS investigative reporter Scott Rodd found the city has less community oversight of SDPD now than it did when voters went to the polls. A warning that this story contains police body camera footage that some may find disturbing.
Watch the dog. Little yapper. In the summer of 2020, San Diego police officers conducted a welfare check at an apartment on 4th Avenue. Watch the bedroom door. There's blood on the inside. Yeah. In body camera footage, you can see officers enter the apartment. 2 children are sitting on a couch when a man walks out of the bedroom. Stop. Police officers shout instructions. The man keeps walking, and then an officer fires a taser. Using their tasers, the officers shocked the man a few more times before putting him in handcuffs. Police made no arrests that night. However, the man who was tased filed a complaint against the officers for excessive force. SDPD conducted an internal investigation and cleared the officers. But San Diego's Police Oversight Commission, which is made up of community volunteers, disagreed. It found the use of force was excessive. The commission shared its conclusions with the department. SDPD then had the option to incorporate that feedback before closing its internal investigation. At the most basic level, that's how San Diego's Police Oversight Commission is supposed to work. But right now,
they are really not functioning at all.
Andrea St. Julian is an attorney and co-chair of San Diegans for Justice. She also authored Measure B, the 2020 ballot measure that called for stronger police oversight in San Diego. It passed with 75% of the vote. The measure requires the city council to create a stronger community watchdog over the police, with the power to launch its own investigations and subpoena witnesses. But that hasn't happened yet.
It is a travesty that the city council has worked in such a way that instead of creating a more robust oversight mechanism for the city and for the police department, they have basically destroyed it at this point.
There are 25 commissioner spots, and currently fewer than half are filled. The city council could have filled those vacancies, but chose not to, as burnout contributed to a wave of resignations in recent years. Patrick Anderson served on the commission until last year.
I was very quickly spending 20 to 30 hours a week just on commission work. It was essentially a second job.
The dwindling number of commissioners couldn't keep up with the workload. There's now a backlog of more than 150 cases, and it will only continue to grow. That's because the commission recently announced it will stop holding meetings and pause its review of cases. Not only that, but KPBS found SDPD has closed dozens of cases of alleged police misconduct without the commission's input, simply because too much time has passed. They include more serious allegations such as excessive force, discrimination, and unlawful arrest.
We can't guarantee somebody who's being pulled over right now that their complaint is going to be heard and given a fair shake by this commission. That's a tragedy. And it's a political disaster, frankly.
It's up to the city council to act. It needs to appoint a slate of new commissioners before oversight of the police department can restart. Those commissioners will need to go through intensive training and eventually develop rules for how the commission will conduct its own independent investigations. Needless to say, the powerful watchdog envisioned by Measure B is still a ways off. Just how far off?
I would say, and this is the best guess, 18 months to 2 years. Well, I've learned how things move slowly in the city.
KPBS sent multiple interview requests to Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp, the council's most vocal supporter of Measure B. She declined. In a written statement, Montgomery Stepp said she's proud of her work on the issue. Council President Sean Elo Rivera also declined multiple interview requests. His office promised KPBS a statement, but instead sent out a news release to all local media saying the council will begin appointing new commissioners later this month. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
Chula Vista Park, with a history of problems, is staying closed, and its future is still up in the air. Harborside Park was temporarily closed 9 months ago after reports of prostitution, drug use, and homeless camps, and the city was hoping to move forward with its first of 3 phases for reopening. It would start with installing permanent fencing around the park, making repairs, and adding a park ranger. Neighbors are frustrated with the lack of progress.
At the meeting, they told us that they were going to change. It was going to change. It was going to be for the best.
The City Council is putting reopening plans on hold for now. At least at last night's meeting, they requested more information about possible joint use agreements with schools, as well as alternative uses for the land, such as housing. The city of San Diego is one step closer to its goal of turning Fifth Avenue downtown into a slow street. Starting on July 1st, Fifth Avenue from Broadway to K Street will be closed from noon to 2 a.m. daily for the installment of bollards at every crosswalk. Gaslamp District businesses expect the walkway to boost foot traffic every day.
With the streets being open, we see much more utilization because we have so much more space for people to, wander around on the streets, and there's a lot more room to move around. So I would say 50,000 people easily on any weekend night in the Gaslamp Quarter.
The next step in the Gaslamp Promenade project is to freshen up streets by adding more trees and replacing the asphalt. Mayor Gloria says the city is also working on plans to design a walkable promenade on Normal Street in Hillcrest.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, lawyers on both sides of the abortion pill debate make their case before an appeals court. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
This year, a massive earthquake demolished parts of cities in Turkey, and 2 weeks later, an engineer from San Diego State arrived there to study the devastation of buildings and bridges. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge tells us what he saw.
The February earthquake was an enormous natural disaster, causing nearly 60,000 confirmed deaths in Turkey and Syria, most of them in Turkey. Structural engineering professor Robert Dowell arrived about 2 weeks later in Adana in southern Turkey, not far from the epicenter.
The length of rupture of that 7.8 earthquake was the same as the distance from San Diego all the way to Santa Barbara.
Dowell was part of a reconnaissance team of engineers there to report on the quake and the damage to structures. He says the magnitude of the Turkey quake was roughly the same as the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Though Downey was not there for the Turkey quake, he did feel the Temblor's biggest aftershock following his first day in the field. He and the team had gone out to a well-known kebab restaurant in Adana.
We had some appetizers, and then my first kebab in Turkey was placed in front of me. Just then, before my first bite, the building started swaying. and it was a magnitude 6.4 earthquake.
He said the waiters and other staff looked terrified after what they had witnessed 2 weeks before. Everybody fled the building, though Dal did later return to finish his kebab. Dal says the devastation seen in Turkey could have been prevented with modern earthquake design.
If you took all of those tens of thousands of buildings that collapsed in Turkey and put them on base isolation before the earthquake, not one of them would have collapsed.
Base isolation design means the foot of the building is not fastened to the ground. That lets the building either slide as the ground moves beneath it or, as in this case, it rocks slightly as the ground moves. Dal was once a bridge design engineer with Caltrans. He says bridges can also have base isolation where the top of the bridge shifts as the lower structure moves with the earth. But Dal admits the latest earthquake design is expensive and Turkey is not a rich country. Dal says his Turkish colleagues pointed out to him that poor funding and official corruption often result in the use of weak building materials and poor engineering.
Like I said, these materials, weak materials, concrete with 1/5 of the concrete compression strength that it should have. Rebar that sometimes isn't deformed and other things, and ties, details of reinforcement not closely spaced like they should be.
Dal says one bit of good news about the earthquake, with all the devastation to buildings in Turkey, many bridges were also damaged, but not one of them collapsed. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
The threat of massive snowmelt in the Sierra Nevada is spurring more closures at Yosemite National Park. 3 campgrounds are closed today over fears that waterways could overspill their banks. The National Weather Service has issued a flood watch for the area until at least Friday. You may recall eastern parts of Yosemite Valley were closed late last month due to flood concerns that never materialized.
Let's take a look at our weather headlines here on KPBS. We are looking at some pretty decent weather for most of us. There will be some isolated mountain thunderstorms over the next couple of days. A little extra moisture in place across the majority of the Southwest compared to normal for May. Almost kind of looks like the monsoon if you go a couple hundred miles to our east, even though it's not the true monsoon yet. But a stray mountain thunderstorm will be possible over the next few days. So the snowpack surplus is paying dividends. Reservoirs are rising, and the southern Sierra, by the way, are more than 400% of average snowpack right now. We have 400% of average snowpack compared to normal for this point on the calendar, as average snowpack really dwindles, and we're holding on to it because we've had so much deep snowpack out there. This is helpful. The drought has ended, and we're continuing to make progress. And surfers, beware. A little bit of an extra danger with rough surf over the next couple of days. Low clouds tonight, 59 degrees for your low. And overnight tonight, we'll get down to around 56 in Mount Laguna, 58 into El Cajon, 59 into Oceanside. And future radar and futurecast showing spotty little showers and storms out there. We could see conceivably 1 or 2 Thursday afternoon into the high ground. Not much, but just a little something over the high ground of Southern California. So we'll keep an eye out for that. There will be some lightning danger tied to any of those storms. And into the day tomorrow, 67 in the big city, and we're looking at 99 at Borrego Springs. We're getting to that time of the year. Temperatures are nosing upward. So the coastal forecast, low clouds, patchy fog in the morning, and more than just patchy fog, low clouds and fog for the coast, and each afternoon gets a lot brighter. Temps will be nosing back up slightly into the low 70s. Inland areas, mid-70s, low clouds break, more sun in the afternoon, rising up to around 80 by Sunday. It's a 5-degree rise. Into the mountains we go. Here we're going to be in the mid-60s, dropping off just slightly Saturday here, but then before a rebound to the low to mid-60s into Monday. And in the deserts, we're stuck in the upper and mid-90s for the next few days. Just be aware. Spotty thunderstorms in the mountains can always bring lightning, and they will bring some danger out there for any hikers. So if you're going to be hiking, try to get up early and get off the mountain before mid-afternoon. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Quinceañeras are a coming-of-age celebration for Latin American girls turning 15. But the parties can be extravagant and expensive, making them inaccessible for many families. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us about a Vista nonprofit making this celebration a reality for a group of women.
We first introduced you to Las Valientes last month.
In English, Las Valientes is the brave ones, because it takes a very brave and valiant woman
to make that decision to leave, because it is a hard decision.
The nonprofit organization Invista helps men and women through their legal battles, allowing them to leave abusive relationships. Ana Serrano founded the nonprofit 22 years ago and has helped thousands of women start a new life after experiencing domestic violence.
And you have a decision to make. Are you going to continue that chain, or are you going to break that chain?
She's getting ready to celebrate a group of the women who have successfully broken the chain of violence by throwing them the quinceañera they never had.
Well, a lot of the women that we serve who have been abused didn't have their quinceañera when they were 15. It's always been a desire in their heart, something that they've wanted.
Serrano says there's no age limit for the women that are selected.
And we just asked them, hey, did you ever have your quince when you were 15? No. Did you want one? Oh, I did. Would you like to have one? And they're like, huh?
The celebration comes with all of the embellishments a normal quinceañera would. The dresses, the waltz, and the entertainment. But the reason Serrano does it,
the look on their faces, just the joy that they have having this dream fulfilled. I mean, that's my biggest payment. That's what I love.
Maria Isabel Montes is one of the quinceañeras.
Un poco nerviosa.
She says she's nervous, but she's been practicing.
Me hacen burla en mi casa porque les digo, los voy a invitar a mi quinceañera. ¿Cuál quinceañera?
She says at first her family would tease her, but now they're getting ready to buy their tickets. The community is invited to the celebration on May 20th.
We're hoping to raise money this year. The last one we did, I think we broke even. I think we made a small profit, not much. But we're hoping to raise money so that we can have more money to be able to continue the work that we do.
The event will be held at Local Roots Kombucha in Vista. Tickets are $50 and include dinner and entertainment. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
It's finally happening. The longtime dream of bringing another Major League sports team to San Diego may be becoming reality tomorrow. Major League Soccer is set to announce San Diego as its 30th franchise. The league teased a significant announcement about the future of soccer in San Diego, and that announcement is scheduled for a 10:45 a.m. news conference at Snapdragon Stadium. Sesame Street's Cookie Monster was in town today, appearing at the National PBS annual meeting and convention. And of course, KPBS education reporter MG Perez tracked him down.
There is no comment from Cookie Monster here at the National PBS annual meeting and convention. But while he is silent, his fans are not. Cookie! Eugenia Harvey is with WNET Public Broadcasting in New York. She grew up with the Blue Muppet and his friends on Sesame Street.
It's the absolute first place on television where I saw kids who looked like me, who looked like my parents, who looked like people I knew, growing up in rural Georgia, by the way.
She is not the only fan here with childhood memories of loving to learn.
It feels like something that's, very close in my life, yet it was also like a very fresh experience.
It crosses generations, so grandparents remember it, moms and dads, kids, so it just brings the whole family together.
And Cookie Monster is part of the family.
Me love Cookie. I love Cookie. I have rent-controlled apartment. I'm not going anywhere.
See, here's for Cookie. If he were in the mood to talk, Cookie Monster would probably tell us that millions of children have found their way to Sesame Street over the decades, learning life lessons. But life has changed since those early PBS days.
We now can get to kids through gaming, through short form, through podcasts.
Sarah DeWitt is Senior Vice President and General Manager of PBS Kids. She delivered news this morning of what's to come in digital content, mobile apps, and new programming to serve the more than 12.5 million visitors every month. PBS Kids led learning as the pandemic progressed and continues to develop content to restore learning loss.
But as soon as virtual school started, more kids had access to streaming, to Wi-Fi, to broadband. It's still not 100%, but a lot more kids had access. And that meant that kids started using all of our content differently.
My family's fantastic in so many ways.
Along with returning favorites like Rosie Rules, there are plans for innovative educational video games and a new animated series called Lila in the Loop, starring a family with a young daughter problem-solving and learning concepts in science, technology, engineering, and math.
We're so careful about always testing our content with kids, making sure that we are really saying it in a way that's going to make sense to them. That is still there today, and that is the DNA of PBS Kids. That's not going to go anywhere.
And Cookie Monster's not going anywhere either. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Tens of thousands of frontline workers in the UC system rallied for higher wages across the state today. They're demanding the UC Board of Regents raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour with guaranteed pay increases to keep pace with the cost of living. And this comes as executives vote on another round of raises for chancellors. And a work stoppage is in effect today at MTS South Bay Division, impacting about a third of bus routes. This as negotiations between contractor TransDev and its operators are ongoing. However, bus routes out of the East County Division, minibus and paratransit service are operating normally. And here is a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. One of the sticking points in the Writers Guild negotiations with major studios is the use of AI. On NPR's Morning Edition, how the technology is already being used in Hollywood writing. And KPBS Midday Edition is all about the arts, from the GI Film Festival to the Fringe Festival, plus the weekend preview. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.